Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back in time, not to a battlefield or a royal court, but to a place that felt, for a moment, like a fairy tale. We're heading to the 1922 in America, a time of sparkling jazz and newfound freedoms, to take on what seems like a dream job. But this dream has a dark, unseen price, and the magic it offers is a Trojan horse. This is a story about night and the deep shadows it can cast. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support truly means the world, and while you're at it, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city and the time in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air itself feels different. It's the early 1922s, and the Great War is a memory, a somber echo that makes the present feel even more vibrant, more alive. There's a thrumming energy on the streets of Orange, New Jersey. You can hear it in the jaunty rhythm of a distant jazz band, see it in the shorter hymnlines of the women walking past, and feel it in the collective sigh of relief of a world trying to forget. For you, this new decade promises something your mother's generation could only dream of: a choice, a life beyond being a wife, a laundress, or a shopgirl. You want independence. You want to earn your own money, buy your own pretty dresses, and go to the dance halls with your friends, your pockets jingling with your own wages. One morning, the answer to your prayers appears, printed in black and white in the local newspaper. It's an advertisement for the United States Radium Corporation. They're hiring girls, not just any girls, but girls with artistic hands for delicate, well-paying work. The pay is the first thing that makes your breath catch. It's almost 3 times what you could earn in any other factory. This isn't just a wage, it's a ticket to a new life. The work involves painting the numbers on watch and clock dials, making them glow in the dark. It sounds clean, respectable, almost glamorous. You've heard of radium, of course. Who hasn't? It's the miracle element of the age. Discovered by the brilliant Marie Curie, newspapers and magazines are filled with its praises. It's the elixir of life, a perpetual fountain of sunshine and energy. This is one of the stranger, almost forgotten facts of the era. People weren't afraid of radium, they were obsessed with it. You could buy radium-laced water ready thaw. It was called as a health tonic. There were radium cosmetics that promised a youthful glow, radium butter, even radium-infused chocolate bars. It was marketed as a cure-all for everything from arthritis to old age, so the idea of working with it doesn't seem dangerous. It seemed prestigious, healthy, even. You'd be handling the most modern, most exciting substance on Earth. You apply, your heart fluttering with a mix of hope and nerves. The interviewers brave. They don't ask about your education or your past. They ask to see your hands. They are looking for nimble fingers, a steady hand. You have that. Then they ask you to demonstrate your dexterity with a small brush. You pass. Just like that, you're rehired. A wave of relief and elation washes over you. You practically float home, picturing the future. You'll be able to help your family with the bills, buy that silk dress in the department store window, and have the freedom that everyone is talking about. You are officially a modern woman of the jazz age. As you share the news with your family, their faces light up. This isn't just a job, it's a status symbol. You're not going to a loud, dirty textile mill. You're going to a clean, quiet studio to work with a scientific marvel. Some historians still debate the precise level of knowledge versus willful ignorance within the company's upper echelons at this early stage. Did the chemists and physicists who ran the corporation know the full, terrifying potential of the element they were handling, or were they, too, partially blinded by the dazzling hype and the massive profits, underestimating the danger of ingesting it in even minuscule amounts for you? In this moment, such questions are unthinkable. The company has assured everyone the material is perfectly safe. The world believes radium is a friend, And you are about to become one of its most intimate acquaintances. You are going to become a ghost girl, one of the luminous women who paint with light itself. Your future feels impossibly bright. Your first day arrives. Crisp and full of promise, you walk up to the solid brick building of the U.S. Radium Corporation, your new shoes clicking nervously on the pavement. Pushing through the heavy main door, you're redirected up a flight of stairs and down a hallway. At the end of it is a door marked simply Studio. You turn the knob, and the world changes. The room you step into is nothing like the dark, cluttering, oil-stained factories you've imagined. Instead, it's bathed in natural light from enormous windows that line the far wall. The air is surprisingly quiet, filled only with a low, pleasant hum of soft chatter and the delicate click-clack of tiny paintbrushes against ceramic trays. Long wooden tables are arranged in neat rows, and seated at them are dozens of other young women, perhaps 100 or more. They are all bent forward. Their postures a study in concentration, like scribes in a medieval monastery. But they are not monks. They are girls your age, some even younger. They wear the popular fashions of the day, drop waist dresses and beaded necklaces. Their hair is bobbed and styled. They look up as you enter, and a few of them offer small, welcoming smiles. A woman a little older than the rest, greets you and leads you to an empty store. This is to be your station. On the table in front of you is your toolkit. It's simple: a small porcelain crucible, a bottle of gum arabic adhesive, a flask of water, a stack of unpainted watch dials, and the brushes. The brushes are the finest you've ever seen, made of delicate camel hair, designed to come to a needle-sharp point for painting the tiny numerals, some no bigger than a grain of sand. And then, the forewoman presents you with the star of the show. She opens a small lead-lined container and scoops out a tiny amount of a fine, greenish-white powder into your crucible. This, she explains, is the radium. You stare at it, mesmerized. Even in the bright daylight, it seems to have a life of its own, a subtle, latent energy. The brand name for the finished paint, you'll learn, is Undor, a perfect name for a substance that conquers the night. The forewoman shows you how to mix the powder with the water and adhesive to create a smooth, glowing paint. It has the consistency of thin cream. She then picks up a brush to demonstrate the technique. This is the moment that will define your work and your life. She dips the brush into the glowing mixture, and then, in one fluid, practiced motion, she brings the bristles to her lips, shaping the tip into a perfect point with her tongue and teeth. Lip, tip, paint, she says with a smile. It's the fastest, most efficient way to keep the brush point sharp enough for the detailed work. It saves time. And since you're paid by the piece, time is muddy. You watch the other girls. Every single one of them does it. Dip, lick, paint, tip, lick, paint. It's a seamless, almost hypnotic rhythm that fills the room. It seems so natural, so harmless. The paint has a slightly chalky taste, but it's not unpleasant. Nobody hesitates. Nobody shows a flicker of concern. You follow suit, copying the motion. It feels a little strange at first, putting a paintbrush in your mouth, but after a few tries, it becomes second nature. This is just how the job is done. As the day wears on, you settle into the routine. You start to chat with the girls sitting next to you. Their names are May and Quinta and Albina. They are friendly and full of life, sharing jokes and stories about their sweethearts and their plans for the weekend. They tell you which movie stars they admire and which dance steps are the newest craze. The atmosphere is less like a factory and more like a sorority or a social club. One of the stranger, more intimate details forgotten by many historical accounts is this profound sense of sisterhood. You aren't just colleagues, you are confidentes. You share secrets, lunches, and dreams over these glowing trays of paint. You also notice something else. A fine, shimmering dust seems to hang in the air, catching the light like 1,000 tiny diamonds. It settles on everything: the tables, the floor, your hands, your hair. When you hold your hand up to the light, you can see a faint, magical sparkle on your skin. The girls laugh about it. They call it the dust. They treat it not as a contaminant, but as a perk. It's fairy dust. Historians who have studied the letters and diaries of the dial painters are still divided on the exact nature of the supervision in these studios. Some accounts describe a demanding environment where speed was everything and the four women were strict, pushing the girls to paint more and more dials per day. Other memories paint a picture of a remarkably lax and playful workplace, where the girls would sing songs, play pranks, and even deliberately paint their teeth and faces with the radium paint for a laugh when the lights were low. You find your own experience is somewhere in the middle. The foreman expects you to be productive, yes, but she also turns a blind eye to the constant chatter and laughter. As long as the work gets done, it's a job, but it feels like fun. At the end of your shift, you pack up your things, your body tired but your spirit soaring. You've done a good day's work, earned a good day's pay, and made new friends. As you walk home in the growing twilight, you glance down at your dress and see it. A faint, ethereal glow clings to the fabric. You are covered in the magic. You feel special, chosen. You're no longer just another girl from Orange, New Jersey. You're one of the glowing girls, and you can't wait to go back tomorrow. The work quickly becomes a comfortable routine. You wake up, you go to the studio, you mix your luminous paint, and you join the quiet symphony of the other girls lit. Tip, paint. The motion is now so ingrained it's unconscious, an extension of your own breath. You can do it while gossiping with May about the cute boy who works at the soda fountain, or while listening to Quinta hum the latest tune she heard on the radio. You become incredibly fast, your fingers flying from the crucible to the dial and back again. Your pay envelope gets fatter each week, and with it, your sense of freedom grows. This is the part of the story that is often glossed over in the rush to get to the tragedy, the genuine joy and empowerment you feel. For the first time, you have your own money. You buy a new close hat, a string of faux pearls, and a stunning flapper dress that shimmers when you dance. You can treat your family to ice cream, buy your mother a new coat, and still have money left over for yourself. You and your friends from the studio become a fixture in the local nightlife. When you enter a dim dance hall or a movie theater, you bring your own light with you. The radium dust has settled into the very fibers of your clothes and the strands of your hair. In the dark, you emit a soft, otherworldly glow. It's your signature, your party trick. Men are fascinated by it. They call you the Ghost Girls or the Luminous Girls. It's a term of endearment, of glamour. You feel beautiful, modern, and utterly captivating. You embrace the nickname. You and the other girls would sometimes use the paint deliberately before a night out. You'd trace a glowing line down the seam of your stockings, paint a luminous butterfly on your cheek, or even dab a bit on your teeth to make your smile flash in the dark. It was a game, a harmless bit of fun. You were, quite literally, radium. Of course, there were questions. Your mother, seeing your faint glow one evening, might have asked if that dust was truly safe, but you would just laugh and repeat the company line. The mantra you'd all been taught. It's perfectly harmless. You'd say, with the unshakable confidence of youth. The doctors say a little radium is good for you. It makes you healthy. This wasn't a lie you invented, it was the gospel preached by the U.S. Radium Corporation and decoded by popular culture. The company actively encouraged this belief. They hired doctors and dentists to write articles extolling the virtues of radium. They would explain, in reassuringly scientific-sounding terms, that the amount of radium in the paint was so minuscule as to be negligible. They even sponsor studies proving its health benefits. One of the most insidious parts of this corporate deception was how they framed the risk. They would sometimes admit that pure, powerful radium could be dangerous for the scientists who handled it in large quantities. But the paint that was different. that was diluted, tame, and made safe for delicate, artistic girls like you. It was a clever bit of psychological maneuvering, creating a distinction between their dangerous radium and your safe paint. This leads to one of the most chilling techniques you are taught: how to clean the brushes. When a brush gets a bit stiff or clogged with dried paint, the best way to clean it, the forewoman shows you, is to swish it around in your mouth, using your tongue and saliva to work the dried bits out before pointing it with your lips. You are, in essence, not just tasting the radium, but actively scrubbing your mouth with it. You ingest a little bit more with every clock face you complete, every single day. One of the bizarre and less known facts is the sheer scale of this ingestion. Years later, scientists would calculate the amount of radium some of you were swallowing. It was hundreds, if not thousands, of times the amount considered safe. A dose that medical experts at the time would have found unimaginable, but you don't know that. You only know the taste of the paint and the satisfying weight of the coins in your purse. Historical debate continues to swirl around the question of what the mid-level managers and for women actually knew. Did they truly believe the company's propaganda, or were they complicit in the deception, choosing to ignore warning signs for the sake of a steady paycheck and a position of authority? Some evidence suggests that the chemists and executives at the very top were well aware of the dangers. They themselves used lead screens, masks, and ivory-tipped tongs when handling the radium powder. But you, the painters, were given no such precautions. You were the most disposable part of the production line. You don't see this disparity. You see the camaraderie of the studio. You see the respect in your family's eyes. And you see the glow on your skin in the dark. You are living the dream of the roaring 20s. The music is loud. The dresses are short. And your future seems to stretch out before you, shimmering and bright. The poison is silent. It doesn't burn or sting. It has no smell. It enters your body like a ghost, a quiet, patient guest, and finds a home in the one place it feels most comfortable: your bones. It settles in, mimicking calcium, becoming a part of your very skeleton. The light you wear so proudly on the outside is now beginning to kindle deep within you, a slow, secret fire that will one day consume you from the inside out. But for now, you just smile, lick your brush, and paint. The years pass in a blur of glowing dust and dance hall music. You are no longer a new girl, you are a veteran of the studio. The work is second nature, and the sisterhood of the dial painters is the bedrock of your social life. But now, as the mid-1920 seconds begin to unfold, a subtle change starts to ripple through your luminous world. It begins with the girls. Some of them, girls you've worked with for years, start to leave. At first, you think nothing of it. They're getting married, starting families, moving on. That's the natural course of things. But their departures seem quieter than you'd expect, less celebratory. Then you start noticing something else. The girls who stay don't seem as vibrant as they used to be. There's a new weariness in their eyes, a pallor to their skin that even the ever-present radium dust can't quite disguise. They complain of feeling tired all the time, of a profound anemia that leaves them breathless after climbing a flight of stairs. They suffer from aches in their joints, a deep, persistent pain that no amount of rest can soothe. The company doctor dismisses it as women's troubles or the simple fatigue of being a working girl. He prescribes aspirin and tells you all to get more sleep. You try to believe him. You want to believe him, but the evidence among your friends is becoming harder to ignore. You see May, once the life of the party, now moving slowly, her face etched with a constant, low-grade pain. You hear that Quinta has had to have several teeth pulled, which seems strange for a girl barely in her 20s. They don't heal properly, leaving her with a sore, weeping jaw. It's this shared experience, this slow, creeping malaise, that truly marks the beginning of the end of the dream. The glow that once felt magical now starts to feel a little sinister. You begin to notice your own reflection more critically. You are always tired. You have a constant backache. And then one evening, while getting ready for a date, you look at yourself in the mirror under the electric light and you see it. The faint, ethereal glow on your skin, on your hair, in the very fabric of your favorite dress. For the first time, it doesn't make you feel special. It makes you feel contaminated. This is the moment the body prison begins to lock its doors. The very thing that made you feel glamorous and unique now becomes a source of creeping dread. You try to scrub the glow off your skin, but it's stubborn. You wash your hair again and again, but in the dark, you can still see faint, luminous traces. The light is no longer just on you, you suspect it's in you. This is where one of the most poignant and bizarre details of the Radium Girls story comes to light. In their leisure time, many of you would go to the local X-ray technician, a man who also worked as a fluoroscopist for entertainment, for a small fee. He would let you stand in front of his machine and see the bones in your hands and feet. It was a novelty, a carnival trick. But now, some of the girls go back, not for fun, but out of a vague, unformed fear. They want to see their bones. And they do, but the technicians notice something odd. The girls' bones don't just show up on the film, they seem to have exposed the film themselves. Their skeletons were now so saturated with radium that they had become, in effect, self-photographing. They were literally radiating energy from within. The historical record on this is fascinating, though still debated by some scholars who question how widespread this specific practice was. But the oral histories are full of these stories of girls seeing their own bones glow on a fluoroscope screen, a terrifying confirmation of their deepest fears. The radium wasn't just a paint they washed off at the end of the day. It had become part of them. You don't go to the fluoroscopist. You're too afraid of what you might see. But the fear is a constant companion now. It sits with you at the dinner table. It lies next to you in bed at night. The parties and the dances lose their appeal. The laughter in the studio feels strained. The girls still gossip, but now their whispers are punctuated by worried questions. Did you hear about Hazel? She had to quit. Her legs are too weak to walk to work. Did you see Irene's arm? It's in a sling. The bone just broke for no reason. You are trapped in a terrifying paradox. The job that gave you freedom has now imprisoned you in a cage of fear. And the cage is your own body. You think about quitting, but what would you do? The pay is still better than anything else available. And admitting you need to quit would be admitting that something is terribly wrong, not just with the job, but with you. It would mean confirming the creeping suspicion that the magic was a lie. And the price for that lie is being paid by your own flesh and blood. So you keep going to work. You keep dipping your brush, but you stop licking the tip. You try to be more careful, but you know, deep down, that it's too late. The ghost is already inside. The light that once made you the star of the dance hall now only illuminates the walls of your prison. A shimmering, beautiful, and inescapable tomato of your own glowing bones. The idyllic myth of radium as a health tonic begins to crumble, not just in your mind, but in the wider world, though the process is agonizingly slow. While you and your friends whisper about your ailments, the advertisements for radium-laced products still fill the pages of magazines. Radium, the radioactive water, is still being marketed to the wealthy and powerful as a source of vigor and vitality. The company, your company, continues to project an image of absolute safety and scientific authority. They are masters of what we would now call public relations. They have a powerful narrative on their side. Radium is new, exciting, and associated with a Nobel Prize-winning icon, Moeturi. The idea that it could be a poison, especially in the small doses you handle, runs counter to the entire optimistic spirit of the age. People wanted to believe in miracles, and radium was the most potent miracle on offer. This is a key point that's often missed. The company wasn't just fighting against a few sick girls, they were fighting against the possibility of disillusionment. If radium was a killer, then one of the great shining promises of the 20th century was a lie. The executives at U.S. Radium are not passive. They understand the threat that your growing sickness poses to their bottom line. They initiate a campaign of deliberate mystification. When a girl gets too sick to work, they make sure the reason for her departure is recorded as something else. When rumors begin to bubble up in the community, they are quick to squash them. They commission their own medical studies, conducted by doctors on their payroll, which conveniently conclude that their dial painting process is perfectly safe. These reports are masterpieces of corporate spin. They use complex scientific language and pages of data to create an overwhelming impression of thoroughness and impartiality. They might concede that, yes, in a laboratory setting, under extreme conditions, radium exposure could theoretically pose a risk. But they would always contrast this with the conditions in their light-airy studios, where the artistic nature of the work ensured that the girls were protected. They leaned heavily on the word sunshine. They call radium liquid sunshine or perpetual sunshine, framing it as a natural, benevolent force. One of the more bizarre and chilling pieces of this propaganda is how they target you, the workers, directly. They hold meetings where company officials, men in smart suits with reassuring smiles, explain the science to you. They tell you that the radium, when ingested, actually deposits in your bones and stimulates the marrow, making your blood richer and your body stronger. It's a grotesque inversion of the truth. The radium does deposit in your bones, but instead of stimulating them, it bombards the surrounding tissue with alpha, beta, and gamma radiation, destroying the very cells it claims to be helping. This leads to a deep and painful confusion for you and the other girls. You are sick. You know you are sick. Your friends are sick. But here are men of science, of authority, telling you that the very thing you suspect is harming you is actually making you healthy. It makes you doubt your own senses, your own body. Maybe it really is something else. Maybe you are just weak. Maybe you are imagining it. This psychological manipulation is as damaging as the physical poison. Historians are still untangling the web of complicity and deceit from this period. The central debate is this: how many of the scientists and doctors involved in these company-sponsored studies were true believers, genuinely misled by the radium hype? And how many were willing participants in a cover-up? The evidence suggests a spectrum. Some were likely just incompetent or blinded by the conventional wisdom of the day. But documents uncovered decades later, including internal memos and letters, show that key figures at the top of U.S. Radium and other similar companies knew far more than they let on. They were aware of the devastating effects of internal radium exposure from European studies and cases, but they actively chose to conceal this information. You don't know any of this. Of course, you only know what you are told. And what you are told is that you are safe, you are healthy, the glow is good for you. But the lie is becoming unsustainable. A new girl might join the studio, bright-eyed and full of the same dreams you once had. She sees the glow on your clothes and thinks it's glamorous. But you see the dark circles under her eyes begin to form. You hear her develop a persistent cough. You see her hands start to tremble slightly as she lifts the brush to her lips. And you see yourself, a few years younger, in her hopeful face. You want to warn her, to tell her to stop, to run. But what can you say? This job will make you sick, this paint will kill you. It sounds crazy, hysterical. The company has made sure it sounds that way. So you stay silent. Then the lie, like the radium dust in the air, settles over another generation. The sunshine element continues its dark work, hidden behind a wall of corporate denial and the dazzling, beautiful, deadly light of its own making. The vague, generalized feelings of fatigue and aching joints now begin to concentrate their attack. The assault starts in the one place that was so central to the dial painting process, your mouth. It begins as a simple tooth. You've had toothaches before. Of course, sword first. You think nothing of it. You chew on the other side of your mouth and hope it goes away, but it doesn't. It gets worse. It becomes a deep, throbbing pain that radiates through your entire jaw. Aspirin doesn't touch it. Finally, You can't stand it anymore. You take a day off from work, losing a day's pay, and go to the local dentist. You sit in his chair, the bright light glaring in your eyes, and explain the problem. H.E.S. a kind man. Someone who has probably known your family for years. He takes a look, and then he frowns, a deep line of confusion creasing his brow. The tooth is loose, dangerously so. It needs to come out. You agree, wincing at the thought, but desperate for relief. The extraction is surprisingly easy. The tooth almost falls out on its own. The dentist packs the socket with gauze, gives you instructions for care, and sends you on your way. You expect the pain to subside, replaced by the familiar ache of the healing gum, but it doesn't. The socket doesn't heal. It continues to bleed, to weep a foul-smelling fluid. The pain intensifies, becoming a burning, gnawing sensation that keeps you up at night. You go back to the dentist. H.E.S. baffled. H.E.S. never seen anything like it. He tries different treatments, different antiseptics, but nothing works. The wound simply refuses to close. This is the first clinical sign of what would later become horrificously common among the dial painters. It's the calling card of ingested radium. The alpha particles, emanating from the radium that has settled in your jawbone, are bombarding the surrounding cells. They are shredding the tissue, destroying the blood vessels, and killing the bone itself. Your body is trying to heal, but the very scaffolding of the healing process, the bone and the blood supply, is being relentlessly attacked from within. You are at war with yourself. Your experience is not unique. You hear from May that she has a three-tooth pull. Quinta has lost almost all the teeth on her lower left side. The dentists in Orange, New Jersey, and the surrounding towns start to see a strange and terrifying epidemic of young women with inexplicably rotting jaws. They console with one another, sharing notes, completely at a loss. They are treating a condition for which there is no precedent in their textbooks. One of the more obscure medical details from this time is the term they initially used for the condition. Before it was understood, they often called it phosphorus necrosis or four-side jaw. This was a known industrial disease from the 19th century, common among workers in matchstick factories who were exposed to white phosphorus. The symptoms were strikingly similar on healing extractions, exposed bone, and eventual sequestration, the breaking off of dead bone. The dentists initially assumed they were seeing a bizarre resurgence of this old, supposedly eradicated disease. They didn't yet make the connection to the glowing paint. This misdiagnosis plays directly into the company's hands. When the dentists report these cases, the company can nod knowingly and say, yes, four-side jaw. A terrible thing, but it has nothing to do with our clean, modern studios. There's no phosphorus in our paint. It's another layer of plausible deniability. Your life is now governed by the pain in your jaw. It's hard to eat. It's hard to talk. It's impossible to sleep through the night. You lose weight. Your face, once round and youthful, becomes gaunt and drawn. You try to hide it, but the swelling and the constant ache are impossible to conceal. The camaraderie in the studio is now tinged with a shared, grim understanding. The girls no longer ask each other about their dates. They ask which dentist they've seen, which mouthwash they're using, whether the pain never stops. Some historians have debated whether the lip-pointing technique was the sole cause of the poisoning, or if simple inhalation of the dust was a significant contributing factor. The consensus now is that while inhalation certainly played a role, the direct and repeated ingestion of the paint by pointing the brushes with the lips was by far the most devastating vector of exposure. It delivered the radium directly into the bloodstream via the digestive system, allowing it to travel efficiently unsettled in the bones. The first and most brutal battlefield was the jaw, simply because of its proximity to the point of entry and the high rate of cellular turnover in the mouth. You look in the mirror and you no longer see a glowing girl. You see a sick woman. The dream job has become a waking nightmare, and the first part of your body to betray you is your smile. The very feature you once might have playfully painted with a dot of radium for a laugh is now a source of unending agony. The silent, patient guest that you invited into your body has begun its work in earnest, and it is starting by devouring your face from the inside out. The unhealing wound in your mouth is just the prelude. The main event, the true horror of radium necrosis, is yet to come. You witness it first through a co-worker, a girl named Molly Maggier. She was one of the first to be hired, one of the fastest painters, one of the brightest lights in the studio, and she is one of the first to fall, spectacularly and terrifyingly. Her toothaches have been legendary in the studio, her suffering a constant topic of hushed conversation. Her dentist, the drive, TNEF, had pulled one tooth, then another, but like yours, her jaw refused to heal. The condition worsened at an alarming rate. The pain became so excruciating that she could no longer work. Then, something unbelievable happened. Dr. KNEF, while gently probing the diseased area in her mouth, felt a piece of her jawbone simply come loose in his fingers. It wasn't a fracture, it was as if the bone had lost all its integrity, turning soft and porous, like waterlogged wood. You hear the snooze and a shocked whisper from May, and a cold dread, sharper than any fear you've felt before, grips you. This isn't just about pain anymore. This isn't about anemia or fatigue. This is about your body. Your very skeleton, disintegrating. The prison is crumbling, and it's taking you down with it. Molly's condition spirals. The infection, which the radium-ravaged tissue cannot fight, spreads through her mouth and down her throat. The necrosis, the literal death of the bone and tissue, is relentless. It creates abscesses that open horrifying passages from her jaw directly to the outside of her face. Her lower jawbone begins to sequester, a medical term that fails to capture the grotesque reality. It means large pieces of dead bone, now for an object within her own body, simply break away. Dr. KNEF, in a procedure that must have felt like something from a medieval nightmare, was able to lift out her entire lower jaw in one piece. The news of Molly's fate trips through the community of dial painters. The vague fear solidifies into stark terror. The company can no longer dismiss your ailments as women's troubles. This is something monstrous, something undeniable, or so you think. Molly dies in September of 1922. She is just 24 years old. The company moves with chilling speed. They had paid for her medical care, an act that seemed compassionate on the surface but was, in reality, a way to control the information. The doctor they hired to attend to her dutifully writes on her death certificate a single, devastatingly false word: syphilis. This is a detail that many popular retellings of the story miss: the sheer, calculated cruelty of the cover-up. The company didn't just deny responsibility, they actively and maliciously slandered the dead. It was a strategic masterstroke. In the 1920s, a diagnosis of syphilis was a mark of shame, a sign of moral degeneracy. It immediately tainted Molly's reputation and, by extension, the reputations of all the other sick girls. It suggested that your illnesses were not the result of an unsafe workplace, but of your own sordid, secret lives. It was a powerful, ugly weapon, and they wielded it without hesitation. You are horrified and enraged. You knew Molly. You knew her to be a good, hard-working girl. The accusation is absurd, a monstrous lie, but it's a lie that some people are willing to believe. It feeds into the anxieties some of the more conservative elements of society had about the new woman, these independent, flapper girls who worked for a living and went out dancing at night. The syphilis diagnosis was a way to put you back in your place, to punish you for your freedom. The academic debate here focuses on the medical ethics of the doctors involved. Were men like Dr. Flynn, the company's medical consultant, true charlatans who knowingly falsified records for money, or were they so blinded by their loyalty to their employers and the prevailing scientific dogma about radium that they managed to convince themselves of these alternate diagnoses? The evidence that has since emerged strongly suggests the former. Dr. Flynn's own reports to the company, meant for internal eyes only, showed that he was well aware of the dangers and was actively participating in a campaign of disinformation. The death of Molly Maggier and the subsequent cover-up is a turning point. It shatters any remaining illusions you might have had about the company's benevolence. These men in their smart suits are not your protectors. They are not misguided or ignorant. They are your enemies. They see your dying friend not as a human tragedy, but as a public relations problem to be managed. The fear you feel is now mixed with a burgeoning anger. The pain in your jaw is no longer just a physical sensation, it's a constant, burning reminder of their betrayal. You look at your own hands, the hands that painted so many luminous dials, and you see the hands of a victim, but you also feel a flicker of something else, defiance. They had taken Molly's life, and then they had tried to take her good name. You and the other girls, the ones who are still standing, realize that if you don't fight back, the same fate awaits you. You will die in agony, and your death certificate will be stamped with a lie. The battle has begun, and the battlefield is your own decaying body. The lie about Molly Maggier is not a contained explosion, it's a slow-burning fire that the company deliberately fans, hoping to consume the truth before it can ever see the light of day. Her falsified death certificate was just the opening salvo. Now, they turn that weapon on the living. They turn it on you, as your own health deteriorates, as the pain in your jaw becomes a constant, monstrous companion. You and several other girls finally work up the courage to approach the company directly, demanding answers, demanding help. The company's response is a stroke of cruel genius. They feign concern. Of course, they say, we want to help our girls. We have the finest medical experts on our payroll to get to the bottom of this. Please, let our doctor examine you. Free of charge. It's an offer you can't refuse. You're in constant pain. Your own doctor is baffled, and you're desperate. So you agree. You are sent to see a man named Dr. Frederick Flynn, an industrial hygienist from Columbia University. His credentials sound impressive, official. He carries an air of unshakable authority. You walk into his office, a knot of hope and fear in your stomach. Maybe, finally, someone will understand. Someone will help. But the examination is strange. He listens to your heart and lungs. He asks you a series of questions, not about your work, not about the paint, not about the taste or the dust. He asks you about your social life. He asks who you've been dating. He asks questions that feel deeply personal, invasive, and completely irrelevant to the agony in your jaw. He barely looks at your mouth, the very source of your torment. When he finally does, it's a cursory glance. He pokes gently, non-committal lie. Then he leans back in his chair, staples his fingers, and gives you his diagnosis. He tells you that your problems are not related to your work. He suggests you have a low-grade infection, perhaps a venereal one. He doesn't always use the word syphilis outright, but the implication hangs heavy and poisonous in the air between you. He recommends a treatment plan that has nothing to do with your jaw and everything to do with a disease you know you do not have. You leave his office in a state of shock, shame, and incandescent rage. The hope has been extinguished, replaced by a profound sense of betrayal. It was a trap. The company didn't send you to a doctor for a diagnosis. They sent you to him for a verdict. And you have been found guilty. Guilty of what? You're not even sure. Of being a woman, of being independent, of being sick. This becomes the company's standard procedure. Every girl who complains is funneled to drive Flynn or one of his associates. And every girl comes away with a similar story, a similar shameful, false diagnosis. It's a systematic campaign of gaslighting. They are trying to convince you that you are not a victim of industrial poisoning, but the author of your own misfortune. One of the lesser-known, deeply cynical aspects of this strategy was how it preyed on the social anxieties of the era. The 1920s flapper, with her bobbed hair and rising hemline, was an icon of liberation, but she was also a source of moral panic for many. The company expertly exploited this. Their narrative was simple: these young, fast women are out all night. living dissolute lives, and now they are paying the price. It was a neat and tidy explanation that absolved the company of all responsibility and placed the blame squarely on you, the victim. It was a story that, sadly, many people were predisposed to believe. The historical debate here becomes even more granular and heated. Scholars argue about the extent of the public's belief in this slander. Did the community of Orange, New Jersey, truly turn against their own daughters and sisters, or was this a narrative that only existed in the company's press releases and the minds of its executives? The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. The campaign certainly sowed doubt and confusion. It made it harder for you to get sympathy. If you tried to tell your story, you might be met with a skeptical glance, a whispered rumor. It isolated you. You feel utterly cornered. The company, which holds all the power, has declared war on your character. The medical establishment, represented by the authoritative Dr. Flynn, has invalidated your suffering. And society at large is being fed a steady diet of lies designed to make you look like a pariah. They are attempting to lock you in a second prison, a prison of shame, built around the physical one that is already consuming you. Your anger is a cold, haunting knell. The fear is still there, a constant hum beneath the surface, but the rage is pure. They have underestimated you. They think that because you are young, because you are a woman, because you work in a factory, that you can be silenced, shamed, and swept aside. They have poisoned your body, and now they are trying to poison your name. But as you retreat into the shadows, reeling from this attack, you find a new, grim resolve. You may be sick, you may be in pain, and you may be afraid, but you are not a liar, and you will not let them write your story. The truth is the only weapon you have left, and you cling to it with the ferocity of a survivor. While the company and its paid doctors are busy building a fortress of lies, a crack appears in their wall, and it comes from an unexpected place: a small, private dental practice in Orange, New Jersey. Your own dentist, the man who first extracted your unhealing tooth, is one of a handful of local practitioners who are becoming increasingly alarmed and suspicious. They are the frontline medical workers in this tragedy, and they are seeing the evidence firsthand, patient after patient. One of these men is your dentist, Dr. Joseph K. Nef, the very same man who had treated Molly Magier. He is haunted by her death and by the growing number of young women from the radium plant who are sitting in his chair with the same horrific symptoms. He is a careful, methodical man, and the company's explanation: syphilis, poor hygiene, a mysterious infection, simply doesn't add up. The pattern is too specific, too consistent. All the victims are young women. All of them have worked, or still work, at the U.S. Radium Corporation, and all of them share the same bizarre, terrifying decay of the jawbone. He begins to investigate on his own, quietly at first. He reads Molly Maggie as autopsy report and is immediately skeptical of the syphilis diagnosis. It feels wrong, a convenient scapegoat. He starts talking to his colleagues, other dentists in the area. They confirm his fears. They are all seeing the same thing. This isn't a series of isolated incidents, it's an epidemic. Dr. K. Nef takes a momentous step. He decides to investigate the one thing all his patients have in common: the paint. He obtains a sample of the undark paint and begins to conduct his own crude, rudimentary tests in his small office lab. He doesn't have the sophisticated equipment of a university research center, but he has a microscope and a keen, observant eye. What he sees under the lens confirms his growing dread. This is where you come in. You've been back to see him many times, your condition worsening. He is one of the few people who has shown you genuine compassion, who has listened to your story without judgment. One day, he asks you a series of pointed questions, different from the ones I've finished. He asks you about the exact process of your work. He asks you to describe, in detail, how you handle the brush, and when you tell him about the lip dip paint technique, about pointing the brush tip with your mouth, you can see a look of dawning horror in his eyes. He finally has the missing piece of the puzzle, the vector of transmission. One of the less dramatized but crucial details of this story is the professional risk these local doctors and dentists took by questioning the safety of radium. They were going up against a massive, wealthy corporation with a powerful PR machine. They were challenging the prevailing scientific wisdom of the day. They risked their reputations, their practices, and the possibility of being sued for libel. Dr. KNEF is not a crusader or a radical. He's just a decent man who cannot ignore the evidence in front of his face. He takes his findings a step further. He contacts a toxicologist, a specialist in poisons, to analyze a sample of bone he had saved from one of Molly Maggia's procedures. He also consults X-rays of his living patients, including you. He notices something strange about the images and moth-eaten appearance of the bone, a distinctive pattern of decay that he has never seen before. It's the signature of alpha particle bombardment. The academic debate here often centers on the great man theory of history. Was Dr. KNEF a lone genius who single-handedly uncovered the truth, or was he simply the most vocal member of a growing chorus of concerned local medical professionals? The evidence suggests the latter. While KNEF was certainly a key figure, other doctors, like Dr. Soothe, Harrison Martland, the county medical examiner, would soon play even more significant roles. But KNEF's early, courageous skepticism was the first critical spark. He was the first person in a position of authority who looked at you, a sick and frightened young woman, and believed you. His validation is a profound, life-altering moment for you, after months of being dismissed, gaslighted, and slandered. Here is a man of science who confirms that you are not crazy. You are not immoral. You are poisoned. The relief is so immense it almost brings you to tears. But it's immediately followed by a wave of pure terror. The thing you feared most is true. The job you love, the magic dust you once adored, is eating you alive. Dr. KNEF doesn't just offer diagnosis, he offers a path forward. He starts documenting his cases meticulously. He preserves evidence. He writes letters to medical journals, trying to sound the alarm. He knows he is outgunned, a small-town dentist against a corporate giant. But here he is determined. He can't cure you. He can't reverse the damage. But he can give you the one thing the company has tried so hard to take away: the truth. And with the truth comes the possibility, however slim, of justice. Dr. KNEF's validation is a private victory, a quiet confirmation of a horrifying truth. But in the world outside his office, you are still isolated. The camaraderie of the studio has soured, curdling into a mixture of fear, suspicion, and shared suffering. The laughter is gone, replaced by a constant, low murmur of whispered anxieties. You look around the room at the faces of your friends, girls you once shared secrets and dreams with, and you see the same haunted look that greets you in the mirror each morning. The studio, once a place of light and opportunity, now feels like a tomb. The air itself seems thick with dread. The very glow of the radium paint, which once seemed so magical, now looks sickly and menacing. Every time you see a new girl, fresh-faced and eager, bring the brush to her lips, a cold knot tightens in your stomach. You want to scream at her to stop, but the words catch in your throat. The company's campaign of shame and denial has been brutally effective. To speak out is to risk being labeled a hysteric, a lawyer, or worse. You are trapped in a conspiracy of silence, enforced by fear. So the communication goes underground. It happens in hushed tones in the cloakroom at the end of the day. It happens in furtive conversations on the street corner, far from the ears of the four women. It happens in quiet visits to each other's homes, where you can speak freely, away from prying eyes. You and the other sick girls begin to form a secret sorority, a sisterhood bound not by shared dreams, but by a shared nightmare. You compare symptoms. Your aching jaw, May's crippling back pain, Quincy's brittle bones that seem to fracture with the slightest bump. You find a grim comfort in the similarities. It's more proof that you are not alone. That this is not a product of your imagination. You share information. Did you see Drive? KMEF believes us. Did you hear what the company doctor told Hazel? He blamed her diet. You create an informal network. A web of whispered intelligence that bypasses the company's official channels of disinformation. This clandestine communication is your lifeline. It's how you learn that Molly Magier's family is disputing the cause of her death. It's how you hear that another girl, Irene Rudolph, has died, and her death certificate also bears a dubious cause. You start to keep a mental list of the fallen and the walking wounded. The numbers are growing. One of the fascinating, and often overlooked, aspects of this period is the role of family and community. While the company was trying to isolate you, your families, your mothers, fathers, and siblings were often your staunchest defenders. They saw your decline up close, day by day. They didn't need a doctor's report to know that you were not suffering from a moral failing. They knew you. They fought for you in small, everyday ways, arguing with skeptical neighbors, helping you with household chores you no longer had the strength for, sitting with you through long, pain-filled nights. Historians sometimes debate the level of community support the girls received, with some accounts suggesting they were largely ostracized, while others highlight a groundswell of local sympathy. The reality was likely complex and varied from family to family, street to street. But for you, the unwavering belief of your loved ones is a crucial anchor in a sea of doubt. The fear you live with is a palpable, physical thing, paranoid. You lie in bed in the dark, and you can almost feel the radiation humming in your bones. You have become the very thing you used to create a luminous dial, slowly counting down the seconds of your own life. You are terrified of the dark, not because of what might be lurking in the shadows, but because of the faint, treacherous light that emanates from your own body. You try to sleep with the lights on, anything to avoid seeing that ghostly glow on your bed sheets. A reminder of the poison you carry within. This is the true, insidious nature of your body prison. It's not just the pain or the sickness, it's the psychological torment. You can't escape your own body. You can't take a vacation from the radium. It's with you every moment of every day. A silent, ticking time bomb fused to your skeleton. The whispers in the dark eventually coalesce into a single, terrifying word: poison. It's a word you barely dared to think before, let alone speak. But now, it's the only word that fits. Dr. K and E of used to. Your friends use it, and in the quietest, most honest moments with yourself, you use it too. You are being poisoned, slowly, methodically, from the inside out. And the people poisoning you are the same people who pay your wages, the same people who assured you, with smiling confidence, that the sunshine element was your friend. The lie is so vast, so monstrous, that it's almost impossible to comprehend, but the whispers are getting louder, and soon they will be impossible for the world to ignore. The word poison hangs in the air, a terrifying but clarifying realization. But what is this poison? How does it work for you and the other girls? The name radium shifts in meaning. It is no longer the magical, life-giving element from the newspapers. It is the source of your suffering. But you still lack the language, the scientific framework, to understand what is happening inside your body. That understanding comes from the past, from the work of the very woman whose fame gave radium its glamorous appeal, Marie Curie. Someone, perhaps a sympathetic doctor or a well-read family member, brings you a newspaper article or a book from the library. In it, you read about the Curies, their discovery of radium and polonium, and their groundbreaking research into the phenomenon they named radioactivity. For the first time, you begin to grasp the true nature of the substance you've been handling. You learn that radium is an unstable element. Its atoms are constantly, violently, breaking down. As they decay, they release a tremendous amount of energy in the form of particles and rays: alpha, beta, and gamma radiation. This is the source of the glow, the energy that makes the watch dials luminous. It's not magic, it's physics. And this energy, you read, is powerful enough to destroy living cells. The text describes how Marie Curie herself suffered from radiation burns on her hands from handling the material. Her husband, Pierre, deliberately strapped a vial of radium to his arm to study its effects, producing a deep, painful lesion that took months to heal. They knew it was powerful. They knew it could be destructive. This is a profound revelation. The company had always assured you that the amount of radium in the paint was too small to be harmful. They presented it as a gentle, diluted version of the powerful stuff the scientists handled. But no, you understand the fundamental flaw in that logic. You weren't just touching the radium, you were eating it. You were swallowing it, day after day, allowing it to accumulate inside you. The danger wasn't from a single, massive external dose, but from a slow, relentless internal one. You learn about the concept of half-life. It's one of the most chilling facts you will ever encounter. The half-life of an element is the time it takes for half of its atoms to decay. For radium-226, the isotope used in the dark paint, the half-life is approximately 1/600 years. A cold dread washes over you as you absorb the meaning of that number. This isn't a poison that your body can flush out. It isn't a toxin that will fade with time. The radium that is now fused to your bones will still be dangerously radioactive 1,000 years from now. It will outlive you, your children, your grandchildren, and the very building you worked in. It will outlast empires. The historical debate around this is fascinating. To what extent was the science of internal radiation exposure understood in the early 1920s, while the dangers of high-dose external radiation were known to scientists like the Curies? The specific pathology of ingested alpha emitters was a new and terrifying field. Some historians argue that the leaders of U.S. radium were genuinely ignorant of how radium would behave once inside the body. However, a more compelling body of evidence suggests that they were aware of European studies on the subject and chose to ignore or suppress them. They knew enough to protect themselves with lead screens and tongs, which points to a damning level of hypocrisy and deliberate endangerment of their workers. One of the lesser-known, tragic ironies is Marie Curie's own stance at the time. While she was a brilliant physicist, she was not a biologist. For years, she remained publicly optimistic about the potential medical benefits of radium, even as she herself was suffering from the long-term effects of radiation exposure. Her fame and her positive outlook were unwittingly used as a marketing tool by the very companies that were misusing her discovery. It wasn't until much later in her life that the full, deadly picture of chronic radiation poisoning became clear, partly due to the sacrifices of women like you. Armed with this new knowledge, your fear takes on a new, sharper focus. It's no longer a vague sense of being unwell. You can now visualize what is happening inside you. You picture tiny, invisible bullets firing off from your own skeleton, tearing through the surrounding tissue, shredding your bone marrow, mutating your cells, the pain in your jaw, the ache in your bones, the profound fatigue. It all makes a terrifying kind of sense. You are no longer just a sick girl, you are a living vessel of a slow, nuclear decay. The word poison now feels inadequate. This is something else. Something timeless and elemental. You have been invaded by a substance that defies the normal rules of biology. A substance that carries with it the cold, fast indifference of geologic time. The understanding is a heavy burden, but it is also a weapon. The company can no longer hide behind pseudo-scientific jargon and reassuring lies. You now have the truth, grounded in the work of a Nobel laureate. And you begin to realize that your personal tragedy is part of a much larger, more important story, the story of humanity's first, clumsy, and deadly encounter with the power of the atom. With the scientific reality crushing down on you, the metaphor of the body prison becomes terrifyingly literal. It's no longer a feeling or a turn of phrase, it is your physical, unalterable condition. The radium, mimicking calcium, has been absorbed by your osteobestals, the very cells that build and maintain your skeleton. It has tricked your body into incorporating it into the bone matrix itself. The poison isn't just in your bones, it is your bones. Your skeleton, the very framework that holds you up. The structure that is meant to protect your vital organs has become the source of your destruction. This realization brings a unique and horrifying form of despair. There is no escape. You can quit the job, move to a new city, change your name, but you can never leave the prison because you carry it with you. It is the core of your being. Every other industrial disease, as terrible as they were, had an external cause. A miner could leave the coal dust behind. A textile worker could escape the lint-filled air. But you, the hazard, is woven into your own flesh. This sense of being trapped manifests in strange and painful ways. You become hyper-aware of your own body. A simple twitch, a sudden ache, a moment of dizziness, each one sends a jolt of panic through you. It is the decay accelerating. You begin to feel like a stranger in your own skin. Your body, once a source of youthful energy and pleasure, has become an enemy, a treacherous roommate that is slowly, silently, trying to kill you. The physical decay is relentless and unpredictable. It's not just the infamous radium jaw. The radiation bombards your bone marrow, the factory of your blood. You develop severe aplastic anemia, a condition where your body simply stops producing enough new blood cells. This is the cause of the profound fatigue, the breathlessness, the pale, almost translucent quality of your skin. Your immune system collapses, leaving you vulnerable to every passing infection. A common cold can escalate into life-threatening pneumonia. A small cut can become a raging, gangrenous wound. Then come the spontaneous fractures. Your bones, hollowed out and weakened by the constant internal radiation, lose their density and strength. You might be walking down the street and suddenly feel a sharp crack in your leg as your femur gives way, or you might reach for something on a high shelf and feel your humerus snap. Your spine begins to compress and crumble, leading to excruciating back pain and a stooped posture. You, a young woman in your 20s, are now afflicted with a bone disease more severe than any geriatric patient. One of the more obscure and tragic symptoms experienced by some of the girls was severe necrosis of the hip joint. The constant pressure and weight-bearing nature of the hips made them particularly vulnerable. The bone would simply die and crumble, making walking impossible without crutches or a wheelchair. You see friends your age, who once danced the Charleston with wild abandon, now confined to their homes, unable to even walk to the kitchen unaided. The academic world, particularly medical historians, still grapples with the full spectrum of diseases caused by the radium ingestion. While the bone cancers, osteosarcomas, and anemias are well documented, there is ongoing debate about the extent to which radium contributed to other illnesses, like reproductive problems, neurological disorders, and other forms of cancer. It was a full-body assault, and the science of the time was only beginning to scratch the surface of its devastating, multi-system effects. You are living proof of this assault. Your world shrinks. The dance halls and movie theaters are a distant memory. Your life becomes a small, circumscribed map of doctors' offices, pharmacies, and your own bedroom. The prison is not just physical, it's social and emotional. Friends who don't know what to say stop visiting. The world outside your window, whether it's healthy, carefree people, seems a million miles away. The ultimate cruelty of this prison is its longevity. The doctors tell you the prognosis is not good. They don't have a cure. They can't remove the radium. All they can offer is palliative care, pain management to make your remaining time more bearable. You are forced to confront your own mortality at an age when you should be planning your future. You are a young woman with an old body, a ticking clock where your skeleton should be. The despair is overwhelming. There are days when you want to give up, to surrender to the pain and the hopelessness. But then you look at the faces of your sick friends. You think of Molly, Maggie, and the lie on her death certificate, and the despair hardens into a different kind of energy. If your body is a prison, and you have been given a death sentence, then you have nothing left to lose. And a person with nothing left to lose can be very, very dangerous to the people who locked them away. The fight for justice becomes the only thing that makes the pain meaningful, the only thing that offers a glimmer of light in the dark, shimmering cage of your own bones. The decision to fight is not a single, cinematic moment of inspiration. It's a slow, agonizing process, born of desperation and fueled by a growing, righteous anger. You and a small group of the other sickest girls realize that waiting for the company to do the right thing is a death sentence. Waiting for the medical establishment to reach a consensus is a luxury you don't have. Your time is running out, measured in broken bones and sleepless, pain-filled nights. If you want justice, you will have to seize it for yourselves. The idea of suing the United States Radium Corporation is, on its face, ludicrous. It's a true David and Goliath story. Except David is slowly dying of radiation poisoning and Goliath is a multi-million-dollar corporation with an army of lawyers and a team of credentialed scientific experts on its payroll. You are working-class women. You have no money, no legal expertise, and very little formal education. The company has already proven its willingness to lie, to slander, and to use its immense resources to crush any opposition. Your first challenge is simply finding a lawyer who will take your case. You and the other girls, pooling what little money you have, start making inquiries. The first lawyer you meet with listens to your story, his face a mixture of pity and disbelief. He shakes his head sadly and tells you there's nothing he can do. The problem, he explains, is the statute of limitations. In New Jersey, the law required that any lawsuit for personal injury be filed within 2 years of the injury occurring. But when did your injury occur? Was it on your first day of work? 5 or more years ago, or was it when your first tooth fell out? The law was written for accidents, a broken leg from a fall, for instance, where the moment of injury is clear and undeniable. It was not designed for a poison that could lie dormant for years before revealing its devastating effects. According to a strict interpretation of the law, your time to sue ran out long before you even knew you were sick. You are turned away by lawyer after lawyer. They all give you the same grim assessment. The case is a legal non-starter. It's a heartbreaking, infuriating roadblock. The law, which is supposed to protect the innocent, has become the company's most powerful shield. Their strategy of denial and delay has worked perfectly. They have waited you out, and now the clock is run out. This legal obstacle is a fascinating and often underappreciated aspect of the Radium Girls' struggle. Their fight wasn't just against a callous company, it was against a legal system that was fundamentally unequipped to deal with the novel horrors of industrial disease in the modern age. Despite the constant rejection, you refuse to give up. Your leader, your spokesperson, is a woman named Grace Fryer. Grace is intelligent, articulate, and possessed of an iron will. She had been one of the first to suspect the paintant had spent years trying to get answers, writing letters, and seeking medical help, all to no avail. She becomes the driving force, the one who rallies the others when their spirits falter. With you, Catherine Schaub, and 2 other women, Quinta McDonald and Albina Larice, you form the core of the group that will become known to the world as the Radium Girls. A 5th woman, and her husband, would join the suit as well. You are a tragic sight. Grace is in a back brace because her spine is crumbling. Your own jaw is a source of constant, serene pain. Quinta and Albina are anemic and weak. You are all invisibly, painfully ill, yet you continue your quest, going from one law office to another, telling your story again and again, refusing to take no for an answer. One of the more poignant details from this period is how you had to support each other physically just to make these trips. One of you might be too weak to walk, so the others would help her. You would share the cost of a taxi, a significant expense. The act of simply seeking legal help was a monumental physical and financial effort. The historical debate here often revolves around the motivations of the women. Were they primarily seeking financial compensation for their immense suffering, or was it a more abstract quest for justice and accountability? The letters and interviews from the time suggest it was a complex mix of both. You desperately needed money to cover your staggering medical bills, but more than that, you wanted the truth to be told. You wanted the company to be forced, publicly, to admit what they had done. You wanted to clear your names from the slander of syphilis and moral degeneracy. And you wanted to ensure that no other girls would suffer the same fate. Finally, after nearly 2 years of searching and countless rejections, your persistence pays off. You find a young, ambitious lawyer in Newark who is willing to listen with an open mind. His name is Raymond Berry. H.E.S. not a famous crusading attorney. H.E.S. a small-time lawyer looking to make a name for himself, but he is something the others lacked: a sense of outrage and a willingness to take a risk. He listens to your story, examines the evidence drive, KNEF and others have gathered, and sees not a hopeless case, but a profound and terrible injustice. He agrees to represent you, for the first time in years. You have a champion. The battle is far from over, in fact. It has just begun, but you are no longer fighting alone. Finding Raymond Berry is like finding a single candle in a pitch-black cavern. It doesn't illuminate everything, but for the first time, you can see a path forward. Berry is not a wealthy or famous lawyer, which in some ways works to your advantage. He isn't beholden to the powerful corporate interests that might have made a more established attorney hesitant. He is young, hungry, and genuinely moved by your plight. He sees the case for what it is: a moral outrage that transcends the technicalities of the law. Berry's first task is to figure out how to overcome the seemingly insurmountable obstacle of the statute of limitations. This is where his legal creativity comes into play. He formulates a brilliant, novel argument. He contends that your injury did not occur when you first ingested the radium, a moment impossible to pinpoint. Instead, he argues that the injury is ongoing, a continuing tort. He also argues that the company's fraudulent concealment, their active and deliberate campaign of lies and misinformation, prevented you from discovering your injury in time. Therefore, the 2-year clock should not start ticking until the moment you could have reasonably known the true cause of your illness. It's a long shot, an untested legal theory, but it's your only shot. He files the lawsuit in 1927 on behalf of you, Grace, Quinta, Albina, and Didna. You are each asking for hourly, $1 in damages, a staggering sum at the time. The filing of the suit is a momentous step, but it also paints a giant target on your backs. The U.S. Radium Corporation, which had hoped you would simply fade away and die quietly, now unleashes the full force of its legal and public relations machinery against you. Their lawyers are the picture of corporate power: experienced, expensive, and utterly ruthless. They immediately employ a strategy of delay and obstruction. They file motion after motion, challenging every aspect of Berry's case. They question his legal theories. They demand endless depositions. They bury him in paperwork. Their goal is simple and chillingly clear: to drag the legal process out for as long as possible. They know that time is their greatest ally and your greatest enemy. You are all dying. If they can delay the trial long enough, there will be no plaintiffs left to testify. This period is a grueling war of attrition. You are already battling a fatal disease, and now you have to endure the stress and exhaustion of a high-stakes legal battle. You are deposed for hours on end, forced to recount the most painful and intimate details of your illness to a team of hostile attorneys who are looking for any inconsistency, any detail they can use to discredit you. They continue to push the narrative that your illnesses are caused by something else, that you are opportunistic liars seeking a quick payday. One of the lesser-known facts about Raymond Berry is the immense personal and professional risk he took. He took your case on a contingency basis, meaning he would only get paid if he won. He fronted all the costs for expert witnesses, medical examinations, and court filings himself. The U.S. Radium Corporation tried to intimidate him, threatening him with disbarment and libel suits. He was a small-town lawyer who found himself in the fight of his life, facing a legal team from one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. The historical debate here often touches upon the role of the legal system itself. Was it a tool for justice, or an instrument that could be manipulated by the wealthy and powerful? The Radium Girls case became a powerful argument for the latter. The company's ability to exploit legal loopholes and create endless delays highlighted a fundamental imbalance of power. It showed how justice could be prohibitively slow and expensive for ordinary people, especially those facing a life-threatening illness. Barry knows he needs more than just a clever legal argument. He needs irrefutable scientific proof. The company still has its stable of paid experts, like Dr. Ave Flint, who are prepared to testify that radium paint is harmless. Barry needs a counter-narrative. A scientific authority who can dismantle their lies in a courtroom. He finds one in Drive. Harrison Martland, the newly appointed chief medical examiner of Essex County. Martland is a brilliant, respected, and fiercely independent pathologist. He becomes interested in your cases after seeing the pattern of deaths among young women in the area. Unlike the company doctors, Martland is a true scientist, driven by curiosity and a commitment to the truth. He begins his own thorough investigation. And it is his work that will ultimately turn the tide. He doesn't rely on the company's fraud studies. He performs his own autopsies. He develops new techniques to measure the radioactivity in your bodies. He meticulously documents the pathology of radium poisoning, from the anemia to the bone necrosis to the eventual sarcomas. Raymond Barry, your young, outgunned lawyer, now has a powerful ally in the scientific community. He has his 5 brave, dying clients. He has a novel legal strategy. And he has a growing mountain of evidence. The stage is set for a courtroom battle that will pit you, the fading ghost girls, against the full might of the corporation that poisoned you. The odds are still long. The delays are agonizing. But for the first time, victory seems possible. While Raymond Barry is building his legal case in Georgia, Martland is compiling his scientific evidence. The battle takes a grim and dramatic turn. The company's lawyers continue to argue that there is no definitive proof linking the radium in their paint to the deaths of former employees like Molly Magier. They cast doubt on the diagnoses, on the timeline, on everything. They suggest that Molly's body, buried for 5 years, would yield no useful information. Barry and Martland decide to call their bluff. They petition the court for an exhumation. It's a macabre but necessary step. The request is granted. In the dead of night, a small group of people gather in the quiet cemetery where Molly lies. There's Dr. Martland, a few county officials, and a team of workers. They dig into the cold earth, the sound of their shovels and a ringle loud in the silence. Finally, they reach the casket. They lift the lid, and even after 5 years, the truth of Molly's fate is immediately, shockingly apparent. Her remains are glowing. The faint, ghostly luminescence emanates from her bones. It is the radium, still active, still emitting its deadly light. A permanent testament to the poison she absorbed. Dr. Martland takes samples of her bones back to his laboratory, but the visual evidence alone is damning. How can the company argue the radium is harmless when it has turned a young woman's skeleton into a perpetual lantern? Martland's laboratory tests provide the scientific confirmation. He uses a sensitive electrometer and photographic plates to measure the radioactivity in Molly's bones. The levels are astonishingly high, far beyond anything that could be considered safe. He can even perform an autoradiograph, placing a piece of bone directly onto a photographic plate in a darkroom. The radiation from the bone exposes the film, creating a perfect image of itself. Molly's skeleton is literally taking its own picture. It is irrefutable proof that the radium she ingested at the factory is still there, fused into her very structure. This exhumation is one of the most famous and chilling episodes in the entire Radium Girls saga. It's a moment of pure gothic horror, but it is also a moment of profound scientific vindication. It destroys the company's central argument. They can no longer claim the poison isn't present. The academic debate surrounding this event is less about the facts themselves, which are well documented, and more about their impact on the legal strategy. Some argue that this was the single turning point, the smoking gun that made the company's position untenable. Others contend that while it was powerful, the company's lawyers were still prepared to argue that the presence of radium didn't necessarily prove it was the cause of death. They were ready to split hairs, to create doubt, to argue that she died with radium in her bones. Not for me. A lesser-known detail is that this was not the only exhumation. As the investigation widened, other former dial painters who had died under mysterious circumstances were also disinterred, and their remains told the same glowing, tragic story. It established a clear, undeniable pattern. The news of the glowing skeleton sends a shockwave through the community and captures the attention of the national press. The story is simply too sensational to ignore. It has all the elements of a great drama: brave, dying heroines, a villainous corporation, a mystery poison, and now a body that reaches from beyond the grave to testify. For you and the other plaintiffs, the news is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's the ultimate validation. The proof is now undeniable. You are not liars, you are not hysterics. You are telling the truth. The relief is immense. But on the other hand, it's a horrifying confirmation of your own fate. You know, with absolute certainty, that your own bones will one day glow in the dark. The prison is permanent. The light is eternal. The exhumation dramatically raises the stakes of the upcoming trial. It's no longer a dry legal dispute about statutes of limitations. It's a sensational, headline-grabbing story about life, death, and a terrifying new kind of poison. Raymond Berry now has his most powerful piece of evidence. The company lawyers now know they are on the defensive. The courtroom is about to become a theater, and the star witness is a ghost. The faint light from Molly's bones illuminates the company's dark secret for the whole world to see. The story of the glowing bones is a sensation. It's picked up by newspapers not just in New Jersey, but across the country. The wire services flash the tale from coast to coast. Suddenly, you are no longer just 5 sick women from Orange. You are national figures, and with that national attention comes a new name. A label that will stick to you for the rest of your lives and beyond: the Radium Girls. The name is coined by the press, most notably by the crusading journalist and columnist Walter Lippmann, who takes a keen interest in your case. It's a catchy, evocative title. It captures the tragic glamour of your story: the youth, the luminosity, the danger, unforgettable. The media attention is a godsend. It brings a level of public scrutiny and pressure that the U.S. Radium Corporation cannot ignore. Their strategy of quiet delay and obstruction is no longer viable when their every move is being reported in the daily papers. The public is captivated and, for the most part, horrified. Letters of support and small donations begin to pour into Raymond Berry's office. You are transformed from victims into heroines, symbols of a larger fight against corporate greed and malfeasance. Reporters and photographers camp outside your homes. They want your stories. They want pictures of your ravaged faces, your back braces, your crutches. You become public property, your private suffering turned into a national spectacle. This is a deeply unsettling experience. On the one hand, you know that this publicity is your most powerful weapon. It's the only thing keeping the company from completely crushing you. But, on the other hand, it's a profound invasion of your privacy, your pain, your decay, your impending death. It's all laid bare for public consumption. You are admired for your bravery, but you are also pitied as a curiosity. You are the living dead, the doomed beauties. The language the newspapers use is often sensationalized, focusing on the ghoulish details of your deterioration. One of the less discussed aspects of this media frenzy is the internal conflict it created for you. You have to put on a brave face for the cameras, to be articulate and defiant, even on days when the pain is so overwhelming you can barely get out of bed. You have to perform the role of the Radium Girl, a character created by the press. It's an exhausting, emotionally draining performance on top of an already exhausting and emotionally draining illness. The historical debate here focuses on the ethics and impact of this early 20th century media trial. Did the press coverage ensure justice was done? Or did it create a circus-like atmosphere that potentially compromised the legal process? Most historians agree that without the intense media spotlight, your case would have likely failed. The public outrage it generated put immense pressure on the legal system and the company to act. However, It also came at a great personal cost to you and your families, stripping you of your dignity and turning your tragedy into entertainment. The U.S. Radium Corporation is horrified by this turn of events. Their carefully constructed image of a benevolent, scientific enterprise is being shattered. They tried to fight back, issuing press releases filled with scientific jargon and expert testimonials. But it's no use. They can't compete with the raw, emotional power of your story and the chilling image of a glowing skeleton. Their president, Arthur Rader, is cast as the villain of the piece. A cold-hearted industrialist who values profits over human life. The media attention has another crucial effect. It alerts other women, in cities and towns across the country. Other doll painters who are suffering from mysterious illnesses read your story in the newspaper and experience a shocking moment of recognition. That's me. They think, that's what I have. Your public struggle gives a name and a cause to their own private suffering. The true scale of the tragedy, which had been hidden in isolated pockets of illness, begins to emerge into the national consciousness. Your case is no longer just about 5 women in New Jersey. It's about hundreds, potentially thousands, of workers across the nation. You are now at the center of a perfect storm. A legal battle, a scientific discovery, and a media frenzy are all converging on your small, frail group. You are no longer just fighting for yourselves. You are fighting for Molly Maggia's memory, for the other girls in the studio, and for the countless other luminous women you've never met. The name Radium Girls may have been given to you by the press, but you claim it. You own it. It becomes your banner, your rallying cry. It is the name under which you will face your powerful enemy in court, with the whole world watching. The glare of the national spotlight makes the company's position increasingly uncomfortable, but their legal strategy remains unchanged. Delay. Delay? The courtroom is their battlefield, and time is their weapon of choice. They know, with cold, actuarial certainty, that your bodies are failing. Each postponement, each continuance, each new motion filed is another victory for them. Another grain of sand falling through the hourglass of your lives. The case is initially set for January 1928. You and the other women, frail and in constant pain, prepare yourselves for the ordeal. You arrange for transportation. You steel yourselves to face the company's lawyers. But at the last minute, the trial is postponed. The company's lawyers have successfully argued for a delay to review new evidence they themselves have often introduced to slow the process. The new trial date is set for the spring. It's a devastating blow. The physical and emotional effort it took to be ready for that day was immense. And now you have to do it all over again. Your health is noticeably worse than it was just a few months prior. Grace Fryer can barely sit upright in her back brace. Your own jaw requires constant, painful medical attention every day that passes. The poison does its work, and the company knows it. This cynical strategy is a well-documented part of the historical record, revealed in internal company memos and the court transcripts themselves. The U.S. Radium Corporation's legal team was explicitly instructed to use every available procedural to avoid a trial on the merits of the case. They weren't fighting to prove their innocence, they were fighting to outlive the plaintiffs. This tactic forces Raymond Berry into a desperate race against time. He petitions the court, arguing that justice delayed is justice denied, especially when the plaintiffs are on their deathbeds. The judge, under pressure from the media and the concerned public, seems sympathetic but is still bound by the rules of court procedure. The company's lawyers are masters at manipulating those rules. One of the lesser-known figures who played a role during this period was a female investigator named Catherine Wiley. She was part of a progressive consumer group and, horrified by your story, she volunteered her time to help. She becomes an invaluable asset, tracking down other sick doll painters, interviewing their families, and uncovering evidence that the company had tried to bury. She helps to build a broader picture of the tragedy, proving that your cases were not an anomaly but part of a widespread pattern of poisoning. Her work provides Barry with crucial ammunition to counter the company's claims. The spring trial date approaches, and again, the company maneuvers for a delay. This time, they challenge the scientific evidence presented by Drive Martland, demanding that their own experts have time to review his findings and conduct their own tests. It's a transparent stalling tactic, but a legally permissible one. The trial is pushed back again. You are trapped in a legal hell. You are too sick to work, and your medical bills are piling up. The small donations from the public help, but they are not enough. You are physically, financially, and emotionally exhausted. The hope that had surged when Raymond Barry took your case and the media championed your cause now begins to fade, replaced by a grim, wary resignation. It feels like they are going to win. They are going to let you die before you ever have your day in court. The historical debate here often centers on the judicial system's response. Was the judge in the case, William Clark, complicit in the delays, or was he simply a victim of a legal system that favored the defense in such matters initially? He seemed to grant the company's requests for continuances fairly readily. However, as your health visibly declined and public outrage grew, his attitude began to shift. He was caught between upholding the letter of the law, which gave the defense certain rights, and honoring the spirit of justice, which demanded an immediate hearing for you and the other dying women. The race against time becomes the central drama of the story. The newspapers report on your deteriorating health with each new postponement. The public watches, horrified, as a wealthy corporation uses the law to slowly and deliberately evade responsibility for the deaths of its own workers. Your personal tragedy has become a stark and damning indictment of the American legal system. You are no longer just fighting Radium, you are fighting a system that allows the powerful to weaponize time against the weak, and it's a race you know you cannot win. Your bodies are failing faster than the wheels of justice are turning. The spring of 1928 arrives, but the warmth of the sun feels like a mockery. With each new delay, a piece of your hope withers. The company's strategy is brutally effective, and you can feel your life slipping away, tangled in the red tape of legal procedure. It seems inevitable that you will die before your voice is ever heard in a courtroom. But the company and its lawyers have made one critical miscalculation. They have underestimated the power of the press and the conscience of the public. Walter Lippmann, the influential columnist, refuses to let the story die. He writes a series of scathing editorials in the New York World, one of the most widely read newspapers in the country. He doesn't just report the facts, he thunders with moral outrage. He calls the endless postponements a damnable travesty of justice and paints a searing portrait of you and the other women being eaten alive while the legal system looks the other way. His words galvanize public opinion. The story is no longer just a local tragedy, it's a national scandal that reflects poorly on the state of New Jersey and the American justice system as a whole. This immense public pressure lands squarely on the shoulders of the presiding judge, William Clark. He can no longer afford to be seen as a passive arbiter, allowing legal technicalities to facilitate a death watch. His hand is forced. In an extraordinary and highly unusual move, Judge Clark decides to intervene personally. He schedules a special, expedited hearing to be held not in the formal courthouse, but in the home of one of the lawyers in Orange, a more comfortable setting for the ailing plaintiffs. But even this is not enough. By the time the hearing date arrives, you and Grace Fryer are too ill to even sit in a chair. You are bedridden, racked with pain, and profoundly weak. The end seems very near. In a final, desperate bid to have your testimony heard, Raymond Barry makes a dramatic request. He asks that you be allowed to give your depositions from your sick beds. The judge agrees. The courtroom will come to you. The scene is one of the most iconic and heartbreaking in the history of American jurisprudence. You are carefully carried on a canvas cot, a stretcher, from your home into the makeshift courtroom. The room is crowded with lawyers, clerks, and stunt reporters. The contrast is staggering. The sober, dark-suited men of the lost and in stark relief to you and Grace. Two young women lying frail and pale on your cots. your bodies visibly broken by your illness. The harsh, formal atmosphere of a legal proceeding is transformed into something raw, intimate, and deeply tragic. This is where one of the most poignant details emerges. When the clerk asks you to raise your right hand to be sworn in, you can't. You are too weak. Your arm is too heavy. The bones too brittle. The pain too great. You have to take the solemn oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, while lying flat on your back, your voice barely a whisper. The company's lawyers, impeccably dressed and radiating smug confidence, are forced to look at you, to confront the human cost of their client's negligence in the most direct and public way imaginable. You give your testimony. You speak of the studio, the friendly atmosphere, the glowing dust. You describe the technique you were all taught: lip, dip, paint. You recount the first two touches, the non-healing wounds, the crumbling bones. Your testimony isn't emotional or accusatory. It's a simple, factual recitation of your experience. And its quiet power is devastating. The lawyers for you, Radium attempt to cross-examine you, to poke holes in your story. But their aggressive questions sound churlish and cruel when directed at a dying woman on a stretcher. Every question they ask just makes them look more like bullies and you more like a martyr. Historians and legal scholars still debate Judge Clark's motivations. Was his sudden intervention a genuine act of compassion, a moment where a man's conscience triumphed over legal formalism, or was he a shrewd political operator, bowing to the immense pressure generated by Walter Lippmann and the press, acting to save the reputation of his court? The truth is likely a combination of both. But whatever his reasons, his decision to allow you to testify under these extraordinary circumstances shattered the company's strategy of delay. The image of you testifying from a stretcher becomes front-page news across the nation. It is a visual representation of everything that is wrong with the case. It is the ultimate symbol of David versus Goliath, of human fragility against corporate indifference. You have finally had your day in court, even if that court had to be brought to your bedside. You have spoken your truth, and the world has listened. The company may still have legal tricks up its sleeve, but they have suffered a catastrophic defeat in the court of public opinion. Your dramatic, bedside testimony has cornered the U.S. Radium Corporation. The public relations disaster is absolute. They are now seen as villains, not just by muckraking journalists, but by the general public. Their stock price is feeling the pressure. Their board of directors is panicking, continuing the fight in open court. With you as a sympathetic, dying heroines, is now a losing proposition, no matter what the final verdict might be. They know they have to make this go away, and quickly. Their lawyers, who just weeks ago were the picture of arrogant confidence, approach Raymond Berry with an offer to settle the case out of court. This is a pivotal moment. A settlement would mean an end to the grueling legal battle. It would provide you with some much-needed money, but it would also mean there would be no official, public verdict of guilt against the company. There would be no landmark legal precedent set by a jury. You and the other women are faced with an agonizing choice. Should you accept the settlement, or should you continue the fight for a public trial and a definitive judgment? Raymond Berry lays out the options. A trial is a gamble. Despite the overwhelming public sympathy, a jury could still be swayed by the company's high-priced experts or find against you on a legal technicality, and even if you won, the company would almost certainly appeal, dragging the process out for years you do not have. A settlement, on the other hand, is a guarantee. It offers immediate relief. After a tense negotiation, the company puts their final offer on the table. They will pay each of you a lump sum of $0 equivalent to over $0 today. They will also cover all of your past and future medical and legal expenses. And, perhaps most significantly, they will provide each of you with an annual pension of $600 for as long as you live. It's a substantial amount of money, more than you could have ever dreamed of earning. But it feels hollow. How can you put a price on a life on a body destroyed from the inside out? $10,000 seems like an insult when measured against the scale of your suffering. It's a sum designed to make a public relations problem disappear, not to truly compensate for the horror you've endured. This leads to one of the most enduring debates among historians and activists who study your case. Was the settlement a victory or a defeat? On one hand, you forced a powerful corporation to the negotiating table and extracted a significant financial concession. You secured lifelong medical care, which was unheard of at the time, in the context of the 1920s. For working-class women to achieve this against a major company was a monumental achievement. On the other hand, the company never had to formally admit guilt. The settlement included no such clause. They could continue to maintain, publicly, that they were settling out of compassion and to avoid the nuisance of further litigation, not because they were responsible. The victory felt incomplete, the justice partial. It was a pragmatic solution to an unbearable problem, but it lacked the moral clarity of a guilty verdict. One of the more obscure details of the settlement was the intense debate it sparked among your supporters. Some, like the fiery journalist Walter Lippmann, urged you to reject the offer and continue the fight for a public trial, to set a precedent for all workers. Others, particularly your families who saw your daily suffering, begged you to take the money and find what little peace and comfort you could in your remaining time. In the end, the decision is a pragmatic one. You are exhausted. You are dying. The promise of an end to the fight, and the security of knowing your medical bills will be paid, is too powerful to resist. You agree to the terms. The great legal battle of the Radium Girls of Orange, New Jersey, ends not with a bang, but with a whimper, the quiet scratch of a pen on a settlement agreement. The newspapers proclaim it as a great victory for you, but you know the truth is more complicated. You have won a measure of personal peace and financial security, but the larger fight for corporate accountability feels unfinished. The company has paid a price, but it has not been truly held to account in the eyes of the law. As you deposit the check in your bank account, the relief is mingled with a bitter taste. You have won your case, but in many ways, it feels like justice has been lost. The settlement brings a quiet, anticlimactic end to the media frenzy. The reporters pack up their cameras and move on to the next sensational story. You are left in the silence, with your victory and your pain. The money helps. It allows you to afford better medical care, to make your small homes more comfortable, to ease the financial burden on your families. The pension provides a sliver of security in a future that is terrifyingly uncertain. But the money cannot stop the radium from humming in your bones. It is during this period, after the noise of the lawsuit has faded, that the scientific story takes a crucial step forward. Your case has brought the horror of radium poisoning into the light, and now the scientific community is scrambling to understand it. The man at the forefront of this effort is the same man who was so instrumental in your legal battle drive, Harrison Martland. Martland is not satisfied with simply proving that radium killed the dial painters. He wants to understand how. He wants to quantify the risk. He wants to create a scientific framework that can be used to protect others in the future. And you, the surviving Radium Girls, are the key to this research. You are, in a tragic sense, the most valuable scientific subjects in the world. You are living laboratories for the study of long-term internal radiation exposure. He approaches you, not as a lawyer's expert witness, but as a scientist and a physician. He asks for your help. He wants to perform a series of tests to measure the amount of radium in your bodies and to correlate it with the severity of your symptoms. It's a daunting request. You are tired of being poked and prodded, of being subjects of study, but you also understand the importance of this work. You agree. You want your suffering to mean something, to prevent others from sharing your fate. Martland, along with a physicist from MIT named Robbie Evans, develops a groundbreaking new technique. They create a device now known as a whole-body counter. It's an incredibly sensitive radiation detector that can measure the faint gamma rays emanating from the radium inside your body without having to take tissue samples. You are among the first humans ever to be studied with such a device. You sit in a heavily shielded room, and the machine measures the invisible light streaming from your skeleton. The scientists are then able to calculate, with remarkable precision, the exact microgram quantity of radium you are carrying. This leads to the coining of a new and chillingly bureaucratic term, body burden. It is the total amount of a radioactive substance permanently deposited within a human body. Your life, your pain, your prognosis, it can all be reduced to a single, terrifying number. This is a bizarre and little-known part of your legacy. You were pioneers in the field of nuclear medicine and health physics. The concept of the body burden and the methods developed to measure it became the foundation for radiation safety standards for the rest of the 20th century. Every worker in a nuclear power plant, every scientist handling radioactive isotopes, every patient receiving radiation therapy owes a debt to the research that was built upon your bones. The data Maitland and Devons collect is horrifying and invaluable. They are able to establish a clear dose-response relationship. They prove that as little as 1/1,000,000th of a gram of radium, permanently deposited in the bones, is fatal. They identify the threshold for developing bone cancer, osteosarcoma, and aplastic anemia. Their work provides the hard, undeniable numbers that regulators and lawmakers will need to create effective safety standards. The historical debate here often focuses on the ethics of this research. Were you and the other women being exploited? Your tragic circumstances used for scientific gain, or were you willing, active participants in a crucial scientific endeavor? The evidence strongly suggests the latter. The relationship between the women and drive. Maitland was one of deep mutual respect. He was a compassionate physician who treated them as partners in his research. You understood the stakes and bravely chose to contribute to a body of knowledge that would save countless lives, even though it could not save your own. So your life settles into a new, strange routine. You are no longer just a patient, you are a data point. Your breaths are measured for radon gas, a decay product of radium. Your bodies are scanned by whole body counters. Your names appear not in newspaper headlines, but in the footnotes of scientific journals. The world may have moved on from your story, but in the quiet laboratories of science, your legacy is just beginning to be written. It's a legacy written in a new language, the language of backwireless and body burdens, of half-lives and sarcomas. It's a cold, scientific epitaph, but one that will echo for a century to come. Just as the dust seems to be settling on your story in New Jersey, a horrifying echo erupts nearly 1,000 miles away, in the quiet, unassuming town of Ottawa, Illinois. Another group of young women begins to fall ill with the same terrifying, inexplicable symptoms. They suffer from aching jaws, loose teeth, anemia, and bones that break with shocking ease. Their local dentists are baffled. Their doctors are at a loss. It's your story, all over again. The company in Ottawa is not U.S. Radium. It's a competitor, the Radium Dial Company, which had opened its studio in the early 1920s, right around the same time as the New Jersey plant. They had recruited the town's young women with the same promises of good pay and glamorous, clean work, and they had taught them the exact same deadly technique: clip, dip, paint. For years, the management at Radium Dial had watched the legal troubles of their New Jersey rival with nervous attention. They knew they were sitting on a ticking time bomb. But instead of warning their workers or changing their practices, they did the opposite. They doubled down on the deception. They actively suppressed information about the dangers of radium. When your case hit the national newspapers, they assured their own glowing girls that the problems in New Jersey were unique. The result of a different, more dangerous chemical mixture. They insisted their own process was perfectly safe. It was a calculated, cold-blooded lie. The tragedy in Ottawa is, in some ways, even more infuriating than the one in New Jersey. The leaders of Radium Dial did not have the excuse of ignorance, however flimsy. They knew. They had seen what happened to you and your friends. They had read the headlines about the glowing skeletons and the bedside testimonies. They understood the risks, and they chose to let their employees continue to poison themselves, day after day, for the sake of profit. One of the most damning and lesser-known details to emerge from the Ottawa case was the company's response when their workers began to get sick. They hired their own doctors to perform examinations, but the purpose of these exams was not to diagnose or treat the women. It was to gather data for the company's legal defense. They would measure the radioactivity in the girls' breath, but never share the results with them, all while reassuring them that they were in perfect health. Your story, now a matter of public record, becomes a crucial tool for the women in Illinois. A young dial painter named Catherine Wolfe, who would later become known as Catherine Donahue, starts to connect the dots. She reads about your fight in New Jersey and recognizes her own suffering, and the suffering of her friends, in the lurid newspaper accounts. Your struggle gives them a name for their illness and a blueprint for their own fight for justice. They, too, decide to sue, and they, too, find themselves facing a powerful corporation and a deeply skeptical legal system. They hire a lawyer named Leonard Grossman, who, like Raymond Berry, finds himself in a desperate race against time. The company uses the same playbook: delay, deny, and hope the plaintiffs die. They argue that the statute of limitations has expired. They slander the women, questioning their morals and their motives. It's a sickening replay of the same injustices you faced. The historical debate around the Ottawa case often centers on this question of corporate culpability. Was Radium Girls' behavior legally and morally worse than U.S. Radium's? Given that they operated with the full knowledge of the New Jersey tragedy, many legal scholars and historians argue yes. Their actions were not just negligent, they were malicious. They made a conscious decision to sacrifice their workers' lives for financial gain, even after the deadly nature of the work had been publicly exposed. For you, back in New Jersey, the news from Ottawa is a source of profound sadness and renewed anger. You thought your fight had, at the very least, served as a warning. You believed your suffering would prevent this from ever happening again. To learn that another generation of girls was knowingly led down the same path to a painful death is a devastating blow. It makes your hollow victory feel even more incomplete. The fight of the Illinois Radium Girls would, in many ways, be even more protracted and difficult than your own. But your precedent, your story, hangs over the entire proceeding. The lawyers for the Illinois girls used the scientific findings of Dr. Maitland. They point to your settlement as evidence of the company's liability. You are not physically present in that Illinois courtroom, but your ghosts are there. Your legacy, written in court transcripts and scientific journals, has become the most powerful weapon for this new group of victims. The tragedy has erupted again, but this time, the perpetrators cannot claim they didn't know. The world was watching, and they poisoned the girls anyway. As the years crawl by, the legal battles fade into memory, but the radium remains. It is your constant, intimate companion. The scientific understanding of your condition deepens, and with it comes a more profound and chilling comprehension of your fate. You learn that the half-life of radium-226 is 1/600 years. It's a number so vast it's difficult to process. It means that in the year 3528, 1.5 millennia from now, half of the poison in your bones will still be active, still emitting its deadly radiation. This knowledge transforms your understanding of your own body. You are no longer just a person, you are a long-term radiological hazard. You are a vessel for a poison that will outlast every memory of you, every photograph, every building you ever entered. This is the ultimate, most terrifying dimension of your body prison. It is a tomb that will remain toxic for 100 generations. This fact leads to some bizarre and macabre practicalities. Dr. Martland and other researchers who study you have to develop special protocols for handling your remains after you die. Your bodies cannot simply be buried in a normal cemetery. You are, in effect, low-level radioactive waste. Your caskets must be lead-lined to prevent the radiation from leaching into the soil and groundwater over the centuries. Your final resting places are marked not just with your names, but with warnings. This is a little-known and deeply poignant detail of the Radium Girls' story. Their contamination extended beyond their lives, posing a potential threat to the environment and future generations. The light that once made you feel so glamorous in the dance hall now makes you a permanent danger to the Earth itself. The scientific community continues to study you throughout your lives. Robbie Evans at MIT follows the cases of the surviving dial painters for decades, meticulously tracking the decline in their health and the amount of radium in their bodies. This long-term study, made possible by your courageous participation, becomes the single most important data set in the world for understanding the health effects of chronic internal radiation exposure, the safety standards for radiation workers across the globe, the maximum permissible body burden for various isotopes. All of these are derived directly from the data points that are your lives. You watch your friends from the studio die. One by one. Grace Froy, the indomitable leader of your lawsuit, finally succumbs to her illness in 1933. You attend her funeral, another face in a dwindling crowd of survivors. Each death is a fresh wave of grief and a stark reminder of your own mortality. You are the last leaves on a dying tree, and you know the wind is coming for you, too. The historical debate around this long-term legacy is complex. On one hand, your story is a triumph of public health and worker safety. The data from your bodies led to life-saving regulations. On the other hand, it's a story of profound exploitation, where your poisoned bodies became raw material for the advancement of science. There is an ongoing discussion about how we remember and honor individuals whose suffering becomes the foundation for collective progress. Are you martyrs for science, or were you simply the first casualties in the atomic age? Your bodies dissected for data. You live out your days in a strange twilight world. You are famous. In a way, your names are in textbooks, but your daily life is small, quiet, and circumscribed by pain. You might receive a letter from a researcher asking for a breath sample. A stark reminder of the poison you carry. You live with the knowledge that the very core of your being, your skeleton, is a source of unending destruction. It is a profound, metaphysical horror that few people in history have ever had to confront. You have become a living monument to a particular moment in history, a moment of naive fascination with a new technology, of reckless corporate greed, and of the slow, dawning realization of the terrifying power locked within the atom. The sunshine element has shown its true face, and it's a face of darkness. The glow that promised life and energy was a lie. The true legacy of radium is the faint, deadly light that will emanate from your bones, long after your name is forgotten, a silent, thousand-year warning from the grave. Your personal story, and the stories of your friends, gradually fade from the front pages, but the shockwaves from your legal battle continue to radiate outward, slowly but inexorably changing the landscape of American law and society. Your sacrifice, and the subsequent fight of the Illinois girls, becomes a catalyst for one of the most significant, yet often unheralded, reforms in worker protection history. The immediate impact is on the dial painting industry itself. The companies, facing mounting lawsuits and public condemnation, are finally forced to abandon the deadly dip paint technique. They implement new, safer practices. They provide their workers with protective equipment. They install ventilation systems to reduce the inhalation of radium dust. These changes come too late for you, but they save the lives of the young women who came after. This is your first, most direct legacy. You were the last generation of girls to be poisoned by the practice of pointing brushes with your lips. But the impact goes much deeper than that. Your case brutally exposed the inadequacy of existing labor laws. The statute of limitations, which had almost prevented you from ever having your day in court, became a major point of contention. Legal reformers and labor activists seized on your story as the perfect example of why the law needed to change. They argued that for occupational diseases with long latency periods, the clock shouldn't start until the worker discovers their illness. This leads to a wave of legal reform. In the years following your settlement, State after state begins to amend its laws. New Jersey is among the first to pass legislation that extends the statute of limitations for occupational diseases, directly citing your case as the impetus. This legal shift is a monumental victory for workers' rights. It gives future victims of slow-acting industrial poisons, asbestos workers, coal miners with black lung, chemical plant employees, a legal recourse that you were almost denied. Your struggle created a pathway to justice for millions. This is a part of your story that is often overshadowed by the more sensational details of glowing bones and courtroom drama. But it is arguably your most important contribution. You didn't just win a settlement, you helped rewrite the law. The historical debate here concerns the speed and scope of these changes. Some historians argue that the reforms were swift and direct, a clear consequence of the public outrage your case generated. Others contend that the process was much slower and more piecemeal, with powerful corporate lobbies fighting against these changes every step of the way. The truth is that your case was not a magic bullet, but it was a powerful and undeniable catalyst that pushed the conversation forward and gave reformers an emotionally resonant story to rally around. Your fight also played a crucial role in the birth of a new federal agency. In the decades that followed, the continued public awareness of industrial diseases, a conversation that you helped start, contributed to the political momentum that led to the creation of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, in 1971. This federal agency was given the power to set and enforce workplace safety standards across the nation, institutionalizing the very protections you had to fight and die for. One of the lesser known, more ironic outgrowths of your case was its impact on the military. During World War II, the Manhattan Project was in full swing, with thousands of workers handling radioactive materials on an unprecedented scale. The scientists leading the project, acutely aware of your story, used the research done by Martland and Devons to establish the first comprehensive radiation safety protocols. They understood the dangers of internal contamination because you had been the first subjects. The safety of the workers who built the atomic bomb was, in a very direct way, secured by the data gleaned from your poisoned bodies. You would not live to see most of these changes. You live your life in the quiet aftermath, managing your plate, mourning your friends, and cooperating with the scientists. You don't see yourself as a historical figure or a legal pioneer. You are simply a woman who got a raw deal, who fought back, and who is trying to survive. But your legacy is built, stone by stone, in the legal codes, the safety regulations, and the scientific textbooks of the future. You forced a nation to confront the human cost of progress. You proved that the lives of ordinary workers had value, and that even the most powerful corporations could be held accountable. It was a lesson paid for in your flesh and bone, a legacy that would protect generations of people you would never meet. Decades pass. The roaring 20s are distant, sepia-toned memory. The world is transformed by a second Great War and the dawn of the atomic age, an age you unwittingly helped to usher in. Most of your friends from the studio, laughing girls you shared your dreams with, are long gone. You live on, a quiet survivor, your body a living archive of a forgotten tragedy. But you are not entirely forgotten. Every few years, you might get a visit or a letter from a researcher at the Argonne National Laboratory near Chicago. This is where the long-term study of the dial painters, the one started by Martland and Devons, continues. The scientists are younger now, born long after you painted your last watch dial. To them, you are a figure from a history book, a living link to the earliest days of radiation science. They are still learning from you. By studying your aging body, they can track the long-term effects of radium exposure over a human lifetime. They learn how the risk of cancer changes as you get older. They study the slow, progressive damage to your kidneys and other organs. Your continued existence provides invaluable data that refines their understanding of radiation biology. One of the most poignant and buzzer facts to emerge from this long-term study is the discovery of radon hotspots. Researchers found that the radon gas produced by the decaying radium in your bones didn't distribute evenly. It would concentrate in certain areas, particularly the sinuses and the mastoid air cells behind the ears, creating localized areas of extremely high radiation dose. This explained the high incidence of head and neck carcinomas that appeared in the dial painters decades after their initial exposure. Even after all this time, your body was still revealing new, terrible secrets. The historical debate has also shifted. In the early years, the focus was on the legal battle and the corporate malfeasance. Now, historians and sociologists begin to examine your story through the lens of gender, class, and the history of science. You are seen not just as victims, but as historical agents who, despite your limited power, profoundly influence the course of legal and scientific history. Your story becomes a case study in women's labor history, a powerful example of the risks women faced as they entered the industrial workforce. As you reach old age, you become a kind of quiet celebrity. A journalist might call for an anniversary story. A young history student might write to you for a class project. They ask you what it was like. Back then, it's hard to explain. How do you describe the taste of the paint, the magic of the glow, the camaraderie of the studio, and the slow, dawning horror? The memories are layered. A complex mixture of youthful joy and profound, lifelong pain. You outlive many of the men who poisoned you. You outlive the doctors who lied. You outlive the lawyers who tried to silence you. Your survival is, in itself, a quiet act of defiance. The company, U.S. Radium, eventually goes bankrupt and fades into history, its name forever stained by your story. Radium itself, once the miracle element of the age, is now understood for what it is: a potent and deadly poison, handled with extreme caution in shielded labs. The cultural shift is total and complete, and you are the human evidence of why that shift was so necessary. When you finally pass away, peacefully, perhaps after a long life defined by a short period of intense suffering, your final contribution to science begins. You have willed your body to the researchers at Argonne. In a carefully controlled laboratory, they perform a final autopsy. They carefully dissect your bones, analyzing the distribution and concentration of the radium down to the microscopic level. Your skeleton, the prison that held you captive for so long, becomes your final testament. It is the most valuable data set of all, providing the ground truth that validates all the decades of external measurements. Your bones, which once glowed with a magical light, now illuminate the darkest corners of scientific understanding. They teach the world a final, indelible lesson about the long, slow, and terrible consequences of inviting a poison into your very core. The story of the girl who painted with light is over, but the knowledge gleaned from her bones will help protect humanity for centuries to come. And so, we arrive at the end of your journey. The story is over. The last of the Radium Girls has passed into history, leaving behind a world irrevocably changed by her life, and by her death. We look back now, not at a single moment, but at the entire arc of your existence. A story that began in light and ended in a long, persistent shadow. Think back to that first day, the air alive with the promise of the jazz age, the sound of a distant band, the feel of your own wages in your pocket. You were part of a new generation of women, stepping out of the home and into the workforce. Claiming your independence, the job itself felt like a miracle: clean, artistic, and prestigious. You worked with the stuff of sunshine, a magical element that made you feel special, luminous. You painted your lips and your nails with it, laughing with your friends in the dark, shining like fireflies. It was a time of exhilarating, naive joy. And then we look at the end, the quiet, sterile rooms of a hospital, the hushed voices of doctors discussing body burdens and sarcomas, the cold, hard data in scientific journals that bears your name but not your spirit, the heavy, lead-lined coffin designed to contain the poison in your bones for 1,000 years. The two moments, the beginning and the end, seem impossible to reconcile. How did one become the other? The answer lies in the faint, treacherous glimmer of the radium itself, A light that promised the world but delivered only a slow, inexorable decay. Your legacy is a paradox. It is both a story of terrible suffering and a story of incredible progress. This is the mainstream historical fact that stands as your ultimate monument. Your fight led directly to the establishment of industrial safety standards that have since saved countless lives. The creation of OSHA, the legal precedents for occupational diseases, the entire field of health physics all were built upon the foundation of your sacrifice. But there is a stranger, more intimate legacy as well. Even today, there are stories, almost urban legends, of people visiting the cemeteries in New Jersey and Illinois with Geiger counters. They search for the graves of the Radium Girls, and when they hold their instruments over the soil, they sometimes hear it click, a faint, rhythmic confirmation of the poison that lies beneath. Your body, even in death, continues to speak its truth in the language of physics. It's a haunting, tangible reminder that your story is not just in the history books, it's in the very earth itself. And this leads to the final question, the one that historians still debate today: who were you? Were you tragic victims? A footnote in the history of science. Your body simply the raw material for discovery, or were you heroines? Brave fighters who, in the face of certain death, rose up against a powerful corporation and changed the world for the better. The truth, of course, is that you were both. You were an ordinary young woman who was handed an extraordinary, terrible fate. You did not choose to be a martyr, but when the time came, you chose to fight. You were a victim of your time, but you became a hero for all time. Your story is a cautionary tale, a reminder of the human cost of unchecked progress and corporate greed. But it is also a story of incredible resilience, of the power of ordinary people to demand justice. You are the girl who painted with light, who became luminous, and whose own body became a prison. But from within that prison, you shone a light so bright that it illuminated a dark corner of the world. And that light, that faint, enduring glimmer, has never truly gone out. And now, the story is over. The echoes of the jazz music have faded. The hum of the factory has fallen silent. The faint glow from the watch dials has dimmed, giving way to a softer, gentle light. Let the weight of this history begin to lift from your shoulders, like a heavy blanket being gently pulled away. The journey we took was long, and at times, it was steeped in shadow, but it is finished now. You can let it go. Feel the narrative dissolve, its sharp edges softening, its details blurring into the quiet hum of your room. The voices of the past are receding, making way for the stillness of the approaching night. Imagine that faint, persistent glimmer we talked about, but see it now not as a poison, but as the first gentle spark of a dream forming in the darkness behind your eyes. Your own journey is ending for today, drifting toward a peaceful, quiet harbor. There are no more struggles to witness, no more injustices to feel. There is only the soft rhythm of your own breathing, a steady, peaceful cadence in the vast silence of the night. Let the current of sleep carry you away now, far from the world of stories and into a world of pure, untroubled rest. The end of the article. Good night.